welcome to Have Your Say. This morning I have with me my co-host, but is now going to be interviewed in regard to the organization of Community Breakfast Collaborative. And what we want to talk about is our upcoming program this month, and to talk about how the organization has evolved in the last year in particular. And so, Anne, can you, as president and founder of the organization, can you give us a little historical background, and then we can go from there?
Well, it's very nice to be on this side of the table today. I appreciate it. The organization really started originally with Radnor Township having the Unity Breakfast for a number of years. But in 2010, when we were dedicating the Bishop Richard Allen Park in the 5th Ward of Radnor behind the Wawa on Bryn Mawr Avenue. That was in 2010 at the reception that we had after that dedication and actually the renaming of the park. We had the reception at Radnor United Methodist Church, and a few of us who were there were talking about how we missed the Radnor Township Unity Breakfast, so we started to explore having our own event that would be run by volunteers where everyone would come and pay their own way, because the township offered a lavish, very nice breakfast when they were doing it for the number of years that they were doing it. So we wanted to make it just very simple so that we could have it. So we started that first breakfast in 2011. And our keynote speaker that first year was Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler, who's the senior pastor of the Mother Bethel AME Church in Philadelphia. So kind of inaugurating the breakfast by emphasizing the connection that Radnor has with Bishop Richard Allen and the founding of the AME Church. Since many people have heard me say this many times, when in the winter of 1784, when Richard Allen, as an itinerant preacher, walked up Conestoga Road and preached at the Radnor United Methodist Church. And that was right where we were having the reception in 2010. So there's a nice historical connection for the Community Breakfast Organization with the AME Church. And then the next few years, as you know, because then you joined in, being involved on the steering committee. So that organization had a steering committee, and we held a number of breakfasts with various keynote speakers a few years in a row. And then we started having panels and events that were facilitated or co-facilitated by other organizations. So we had, well, first we had Patricia Coulter from the Urban League of Philadelphia as a keynote speaker, and then Dr. Hiro Nishikawa, who is from Mainline Unitarian Church, but also talked about his experiences being in the Japanese concentration camps here in the United States. So he talked about that. And then a few years running, we had events co-facilitated first by the Radnor Middle School students, and I think that was really when there were starting to be a lot of shootings of unarmed African American men by police, and we were really engaging with the children, with the students, to see what their input was going to be. And the following year was co-facilitated by Radnor High School students. And I did skip over Reverend James Pollard, who was one of our keynote speakers a couple years before the students facilitated. And he's the pastor of Zion Baptist Church in Ardmore, as you know. That was an amazing breakfast. I wouldn't pick a favorite breakfast because they're all different and they all had different strengths. And in the early years, we had people from different faith communities giving prayers as part of the breakfast. Cantor from Mainline Reformed Temple actually sang in Hebrew but explained in English first a particular prayer, since we were right near Rosh Hashanah. That was wonderful. Cantor Marshall Portnoy. That was early on. And then we did have a Buddhist prayer one year too, so there was a lot of bringing in different people from the faith communities to participate too. But I do have to say that Reverend Pollard had everyone hugging each other at the end of the breakfast. Which
that's what he does.
I think people remember that.
Yes.
That experience of saying to the person next to you, he encouraged us to say, "You deserve a hug," and now I'm going to give you that hug. So we got everybody warmed up, and before you knew it, everybody was hugging each other in the room. And then he segued into the choir singing the song that they were going to sing next. So he was just like a perfectly skilled pastor with all of us in attendance and then with the choir coming in. And then the most recent past couple of years, co-presented by the NAACP Mainline Branch. So you had a strong involvement in the past 2 years with being the moderator on those two subjects, and then those panelists, which those were great and well received. So moving to this year, talking about our 2019 community breakfast, we're having another panel, so a similar format of similar to the past 2 years. And I think it's good to, I guess, change formats through the years. So, but we're having a panel again. So it's really been well received, and that's co-presented with Heeding God's Call to End Gun Violence. And the panelists will be Brian Miller, who's that executive director, and we recorded a program, a Have Your Say program with him and with Father Joe Janito. That was one of our first Ending Gun Violence programs that we recorded earlier that was in the late spring, I guess, when we recorded that one. And so he'll be one of the panelists, and then the Chief of Police of Norristown, Chief Talbot, is going to be on the panel. And then 2 Radnor High School students will be on the panel. And the moderator will be Sarah Wallace, who is from Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And she works as a volunteer legislative lead for Philadelphia. In that organization, and we interviewed her too. So we'll have a panel with questions from the audience written on index cards that a number of us will bring up to Sarah, and then she'll facilitate that panel to have, once again, an engaging conversation between the attendees and then the panelists on a particular subject. But this year is gun violence in our community, the impact of gun violence on our community, and what we can do. And that second part is really important too, what we can do. Because I think with all of the concern and the experiences that we're all going through, not even being the victims of gun violence, but the impact that it has on all of us, we need to be able to take action in certain ways. And so it's going to be so important to talk about that at this year's breakfast.
So, so when we look back, how would you describe the original purpose of the breakfast, and even now, how would you describe the purpose? What do we plan on accomplishing with having these unity breakfasts?
I guess also then I should talk about the Community Breakfast Collaborative and how things have changed through the years. This event that we're having this year is our 9th Community Breakfast. Looking back towards when Radnor Township was hosting the Unity Breakfast, that was really very much about unity and bringing together all the people, as many as who wanted to attend in Radnor Township mostly, even though there were people from other townships attending. That was very much about unity. When we started, we emphasized the Community Breakfast Undoing Racism Day to have that particular angle and that particular focus. So in all of the previous breakfasts, we definitely had a tight focus on Undoing Racism Day and having a particular speaker or panel with a particular topic, and then drawing on, especially the panelists, their various fields of expertise on the particular theme for that year. Changing to the Community Breakfast Collaborative, so as you know, we've been working on it took over a year to change from the organization that we were into a nonprofit 501c3, which
Right.
there's a number of documents you have to file with the state and even the federal government
Yeah.
to achieve that 501c3 status. The Community Breakfast Collaborative mission is broader. We're actually trying to include 7 townships, which is a broad reach. It's actually the same reach as the NAACP
Right.
mainline branch, those 7 townships.
Right.
So we're really trying to be inclusive of the whole main line. So even from the very beginning, we expanded from just Radnor Township, and now we're just going broader and broader
Right.
to
Right.
include as much of the main line as possible. And people from Philadelphia have come to the breakfast.
Oh yeah,
over the years
I
as
mean,
well.
it's always open to everybody to attend. But like you said, I think when we talked about their throughout the main line, that whatever the issues are very similar in the different townships. So how nice is it to bring all the representatives from the various townships together to discuss those issues? So yes.
And I would say a couple of things that are emphasized more with the Community Breakfast Collaborative. We've always talked about Martin Luther King's beloved community.
Yes.
Now in our mission statement, vision statement, statement of purpose, all of those good things that you want to have in a nonprofit, we're saying, let's just go ahead and be the beloved community. And we're human beings, we're imperfect, but we're still going to try and work with each other and make mistakes, but still engage with each other, and let's just go ahead and be the beloved community. Let's just do that. So that's an important emphasis in the Community Breakfast Collaborative nonprofit. And then the other thing that we're doing is trying to choose a theme and then have it sustained through the whole year. So this year we're co-presenting with Heeding God's Call to End Gun Violence and sustaining that theme through the whole year. Right now we're still having the one annual event.
Right.
You know, as volunteers there's only so much we can do.
Yes.
We're starting to talk about maybe introducing an event in the spring. So, but we'll, just still getting set up as the nonprofit, and we have our annual event coming up very soon.
Very soon.
As we have volunteers who want to join in, we'll be able to do more. But sustaining that theme through the year, and then such an important part of that as the 5 interviews that we did with the various ending gun violence organizations.
Right.
And all of those, I should say, are posted on our website. That's another new thing. We had a high school student be an intern this year, Rai Ganesan from Radnor High School, and she started up a website for us.
Yes.
And so those links for those 5 interviews are posted on the website, communitybreakfast.weebly.com/resources. I think that subpage has all of those interviews listed on there, so you can link right to those.
Which is good.
Yeah.
So the more we discuss the beloved community and realizing the fact that we have to really explain what that means, how do you suggest we really start talking about that piece? Because we talk about it, we've incorporated Dr. King's quote as to what he says his philosophy was, and what he believed would happen if we achieved the beloved community. So how do we really impart that kind of information to the current generations who were not even alive when he was? So
well, we have that one quote on our website that begins, "The end is reconciliation, the end is the beloved community." And that, to me, points towards how we need to work with each other, all of us of different races and cultures and ethnicities. All of us in our difference need to engage with each other. And so I think talking about becoming the beloved community, the very first step is what we're aiming to do with the community breakfast, and this is to meet, to dialogue with each other. And we were talking about this before too, that it's so important to be able to sit down with someone, even if you disagree with that person, or you don't know what their view is on the topic at hand. Like we're going to be talking about ending gun violence and the impact and what we can do about it, what actions we can take. It's so important that we're able to sit down and dialogue with each other. Absolutely. And the community breakfast creates a space where we can come together and do that. Right. So when you're talking about dialoguing with each other, and I don't want to get too theological, but at the community breakfast, we sit down and we break bread. And we risk hospitality, which I want to say that's in quotes, risk hospitality, because when
I saw that, I was like, risk? Okay, that's interesting.
And that is in some literature about this, in the scholarship, but also in the activity of how do you go about engaging with someone who is the stranger, the other, someone who's different from you. And I would say we are all different from each other. Deep down, we're mysterious to each other. You don't really get to know even the person that you're married to or your best friend. You don't get to know them completely and deeply. It just it's not possible. We're still strangers to each other to a certain extent, always. So you try to engage with each other as best as you can and be in constant dialogue with each other. And there's something I've been doing some reading about Pope Francis, and just very briefly, we share our common humanity, and that's the most important thing, is to have that solidarity. We share our common humanity with each other, even if we have different opinions about a particular issue. And certainly this year's topic of ending gun violence, people have so many different views. The way they're raised, different cultures that they have in terms of gun culture, different parts of the country they may be raised in. There's so many different views on that. But we have to remember that we share a common humanity. So even if we disagree on an issue, we can sit down with each other and still talk to each other. And I may have my point of view, and you might have your point of view, and we might not agree with each other on those, but we can learn what our opinions are from each other, and then hopefully be closer, because now we've had a conversation, and that's also, I think, the beginning of things too. That you continue to have these conversations and have that ability.
Yeah, I think that's important, and I think it's really important when you talk about, when I start to think once again about the generational differences, that in some of those differences is exactly the opposite. Because of technology, because of other things, they actually engage less with each other. Very often it's their individuals is much harder. Like I've actually been places where I've seen younger ones, they're all sitting together at a table and everybody's on their phone texting, and I'm thinking like, okay, this is interesting, and so they're not. So they're in the space together, but they're not engaging with one another. And so everybody, their mind is totally someplace else. And so once again, technology has been great in certain aspects, but has it also created that distance, for folks to actually be more distant, and so therefore you're not having those conversations, and even when you're in the same space, your mind is totally someplace else. And so, how do we deal with that? Because sometimes in your own mind and in your own space, your thoughts and the way you perceive things, if you're not sharing that, or you don't have the ability to share that, you may not even realize that there's a problem with those thought processes until it's conveyed to someone else, and they might say, So, how do we deal with those generational differences?
I think that our listening and being present to each other is a skill we either need to relearn or learn.
Yes.
That like you and I are sitting across from each other and we're talking, we're having a conversation.
Right.
We are using technology to make this program,
Right.
but we are face to face with each other, engaging in a conversation.
Right.
And it's the same thing as people sitting down at the dinner table or at the supper table, and
Yes.
families and friends getting together and sharing a meal and having a conversation. That's something that happens less and less.
You're
I
right.
understand now, and that's also something
Yeah.
I think that we're rusty at, or we
Yeah.
have to learn, to be present with each other and talk. And it's intense to be present with each other too. And I can say I have been guilty of sitting in the same room as family members and texting,
right.
someone else, because it was just easier.
Right.
But so it's a skill that we have to practice.
Right.
Being present with each other like that.
Right, and I think once my granddaughter, now she's at the place where we are all together, at a meal or whatever, and she says anybody with a phone, especially her father, sometimes she'll go like, no phones.
That's it. You have to make a rule now.
And you have to be intentional about it, and so intentional about that conversation, and not be distracted by that cell phone. And so, so as we were coming up on this program, give us a date and talk about the upcoming program this September.
September 18th, Wednesday, September 18th, from 7:30 a.m. till 9:30 a.m. So we have the full 2 hours.
Right, where?
And it's at Villanova University in the Connolly Center in the Villanova room, which is a nice large room. And we'll have many tables that seat 8 people. We ask people to come, and you do have to register, which means old-fashioned way, print out the form, which is available on our website, and mail it into our P.O. Box, P.O. Box 135 in Villanova, and register for the breakfast and attend. And even if you're going to come with a group of people from your employer, from your particular township, from your faith community, we encourage everybody to sit with someone new and make a new friend. So it's also that encountering the stranger, and making a friend, getting to know someone else, not sit with the same people that you came with. And there will be a number of students in attendance, and they will be spread out at various tables in pairs, so that we can have an intergenerational conversation, as well as all of the interfaith, interracial, intercultural conversations that you have, because we're going to mix everybody up by, hopefully everybody's choosing that, but also the students will be spread out, so we can have that intergenerational aspect. And then our topic, as we said before, is the impact of gun violence on our community and what we can do.
And which is really a hot topic for this
very
time
important
that we live in. And so, having said all of that, deadline for, you have a deadline for folks mailing in their
the deadline's
form.
coming right up, but if people mail it in, hopefully we can get, usually have room that we can include everybody who wants to attend.
And if somebody is running late with their form, they can email you saying they're coming and they can pay on site, correct? Pay cash, and then give us their email address when they're there, because that's the idea, is we're trying to include everybody in our Community Breakfast Collaborative community, since we're trying to become the beloved community. We want to be in touch with everybody. Well, this has been great, and certainly we hope everybody will, who can attend, will. I'm sure this will promise to be an engaging topic and information forum. And so please spread the word. If you're coming, let others know about it. And let's do the work that it's going to take for us to truly be the beloved community. And as we do that, each individual will have the opportunity to have your say. Thank you.